So we started this season, couldn't have gone much better in terms of a recruitment point of view. Teemu Pukki, Emi Buendia. Just talk us through the process of locating a player like that, because it's not what I think is described in footballing terms as the mainstream.
Yeah, I mean, we watched a lot of video footage at the start of the season, certainly around the August, September time, and in that period, Emi was a player that was flagged. He was then backed up with some strong data, some statistics. It then fell onto my lap, so obviously I popped out to Spain, as you do, and watched him play and was pretty convinced straight away. In fairness, was strong to Stuart on it, and then obviously Stuart went and done the deal, and we got that one sorted in January. So that's how that one would work. For example, Teemu popped up a little bit later on when we were in the hunt for a centre forward for the following season. He was scoring obviously a lot of goals for Bromby. He was sort of flagged to us again through stats that anyone could access. You know what I mean? High scoring player. So we tracked him, watched him, attempted to go and watch him on one occasion, and the plane decided to go wrong on the runway, which was interesting. So me and Stuart both got off, and then I went back the following week, and that was those two, for example. That was the process on those two.
And for you, how different has it been perhaps looking in markets that perhaps you wouldn't have looked in before, in terms of, let's say, Denmark, for example? It's quite an obscure market in terms of English clubs. We don't see a lot of Danish signings. So for you, what's that been like? Because that must be maybe not completely different, but maybe something that's a bit different to yourself.
Well, personally, I think there's players everywhere. I think there's players that we've got a real strong identity in how we play, so it makes it really easy for me to find the players that we could recruit for that system and in how we play. So those types of players are in any league. I think what helps us is our style of play actually lends ourselves to maybe Spain, where Spanish players come to England haven't always done great, but where we have got a style of play that suits them, it's helped. For example, Emi being a really good example of that. So that obviously helps.
And let's talk about Teemu Pukki. Obviously 20 or 28 goals, I think, as we're speaking at the moment in the league.
Soon to be 30.
Yeah, soon to be 30, fingers crossed. But for him, how much do you take into consideration, let's say, his Celtic spell, which I think probably would have put off a few English clubs at the time? How much were you keen to sort of recognise that perhaps that was he was a bit more of a different player now than he was then?
Yeah, I would be lying if I said we didn't look at it, but it didn't really become a factor for us. He was someone I watched a lot of on video and obviously live, and he was always in space. In fairness to him out there, he was always in a yard, 2 yards of space, and I felt if we could get him here and find half a yard of space, he might score us 10 goals. So fantastic that he scored a few more than that. But he just looked like a player for me that would suit how we play and has. To be fair, he was what we were missing, an in-the-box striker that could score goals. That's exactly what we got.
And in terms of recruitment, you said it a few times, it seems a lot more statistical now than perhaps, or at least initially, before going out to watching players live. Is that the case for everyone, or is it a bit different depending on the case study? I've probably overplayed the statistics thing a little bit too much. Our recruitment's not led by statistics, it's just a factor that supports what we do. We very much work on our eyes, video work, going out, watching lots and lots and lots of football. The statistics help. It's a tool that we have, so we use it as a support. So it is something that we do, but we don't actually run the department on statistics, which I have read someone that said, which isn't actually true. And I suppose it helps in a way if perhaps there is a market that's a bit far reaching. It does help to sort of get a ground-basing understanding of a player with sort of statistics before going to watch them, for example. So they can be useful in that sense, but important that it's not entirely based on them.
Yeah, we're not 100% led by it, but and the same with video. The platforms that we use here, where we can access any game anywhere effectively, helps us get an understanding of a player before we go. So that's always a vital cog in a wheel to what we do.
And you've spoken about sort of players in terms of how they play football. How much recruitment do you do in terms of character? Because particularly for the strength of the group that they've managed to build here, how important is it to buy the right characters, and how do you go about scouting and making sure the characters are right for the group?
Yeah, it's a tough one actually. It's a tough thing to identify. You'll find when you speak to people, no one really wants to say anything negative about the player because they don't want to affect his career, which I do understand. So you do find that that's a tough one to go for. So we look for subtle hints on the pitch when they're starved, when they come off a tough game, when they're losing 3-0, etc. The usual's what you'd expect, but we really look for hints that could help us understand a character that we could be signing. But there's not an exact science to that one yet. There's room to improve on that, definitely.
And in terms of domestically, how does the scouting differ from scouting someone domestically to scouting someone in Spain? Are they two completely different processes, or is it something that actually the processes are very similar?
No, very similar. It's just minus the plane domestically and the travel normally. But no, it's very, very similar on how we work. The process is, like I say, practically identical. It will just be less travel.
And we've got to talk about promotion, I suppose. How do Norwich's recruitment focus change now? Is it a case of being able to reach markets that perhaps weren't reachable, or perhaps looking at a higher tier of player? How does it change?
It doesn't change massively, because we tend, when we scout a football match, we scout the players on that pitch for loads of different scenarios. So we could be in League One, we could be in the Premier League, we could be in the Championship, there could be a free transfer, a young player, etc. So we scout the players on the pitch, if that makes sense, and then we will then put them into categories that suit what we're looking for. So our scouting isn't going to change drastically, but obviously the level of player that we could recruit now just goes up a level. So hopefully we can do that. And
I suppose the message from you guys is that the money hasn't drastically changed, even though the club have gone up a division.
No, it hasn't. The same constraints are there. We've got to be really smart. We've got to be really brave with our recruitment. We're going to have to maybe go for things that maybe other clubs won't, but we did that last year and it's worked, so we're not going to change from what we've done. Hopefully we'll have the same success this season.
Does it excite you going into the Premier League with perhaps a different way of working to other clubs, because it's not going to be a case of being able to go and spend 20 million on let's say 4 players, for example? So does that excite you, the challenge of having to find players that perhaps don't cost as much money?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always been at clubs that haven't had money, and I've always had to sort of be creative with what we do, and I actually like it that way. I'm not sure I'd want to be at a top club that's got £1 billion to spend on players. I mean, with some respects, we all know them players, and the deal's easy. You just pay more than the rest. I like it this way. I like to be hunting for that needle in a haystack. That suits my style of scouting. And
for you must be delighted with some of the players that you've recruited throughout your time here, who have gone on to have the impact that they have. Yeah, fantastic. I mean, it's the two standouts are the obvious two, who've quite rightly had a lot of plaudits, but there's been, you know, some fantastic additions like Kenny McLean, who's just been solid. He's come and he's scored some vital goals. His stats are really, really high for a player playing in central midfield. He's been brilliant. Onel, you know, his stats are excellent. Tim's been brilliant. You know, the lot of them have done fantastic. Even Jordan Rhodes, who hasn't quite had the game time he would have liked, has just come in and just been super professional. Just got on with it, and then he's added when we've needed in the 2 goals at Villa, the West Brom. You know, so a lot have done brilliant. And in terms of young players, what exactly are you looking for in terms of those? Is it a case of looking for certain traits or looking for certain positions, or is it again a case of just spotting something that makes them different and that makes them want to buy in here? I don't know if it's something different. We just try and spot the player that suits us. You know, a player that I can see that's going to, you know, Daniel's going to be able, and his staff are going to be able to get another 20% out of. You know, the dietary will get another 2% out of, the fitness guys will get another 5%. You know, we just look for those players that we just don't think are finished, the ones that have got that little bit more to go, which has worked well for us so far. Yeah, and in terms of the calibre of players we've recruited, with sort of Mo Light and a Tom Tribal, players that have perhaps been slightly disregarded elsewhere, perhaps have slightly been regarded as not damaged goods, is probably a bit harsh, but clubs don't fancy a chance of them. You guys have taken a chance of them, so how much do you look at their reputations and their stuff, or is it just stripped away and you look solely at the player? Yeah, I mean, both players were strongly recommended by Daniel on Tom and Mo. He'd worked with them previously, he knew the players really well, and he could see how they would fit our style of play. Obviously, we support that and back that up and watch, you know, footage, and you know, we all agreed, as we always do with all the players. We all felt that we always agree on the players, and you know, he's done fantastic with Tom and Mo, to be fair to him. So. Yeah, they suit our style of play straight away, and it just helps straight away. I was going to ask you about that dynamic between you, Daniel, and Stuart, because that seems quite a strong free to recruit a player. How does it get to the stage of signing a player? Is it agreement from all sides, or does someone take the lead on that? Yeah, no, it is. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, Stuart's the man at the top of the tree that will, but I don't think yet he's had to call rank, if you want to call it that. I think we all buy into. I mean, Emmy's a great example of, there was a million reasons not to sign him. You know, he's a little fiery lad, he's an Argentinian, Spanish lad playing in a team getting relegated, he was a little bit overweight, you know, the arms were in the air every time he got subbed. There's a lot of reasons not to sign him, but I felt we could get another 20% out of him. I think we've actually got more, but Daniel had to be brave enough to play him, Stuart had to be brave enough to go and do that deal and do it quick, which he did. I just think we all
see the same, and we all just work on the same wavelength. And Emmy's a great example of when you do that, it can work.
You said the word there, brave. Is that the best way to sum up Norwich's recruitment strategy in the last couple of seasons?
Yeah, I think it's been brave. I think it's been brave because we've had to be brave, because there's been, we couldn't go and just couldn't sign the players that were going to cost fortunes, and we also weren't going to go down the route of going to get the tried and tested domestic player who's 29, wants to pick up another 3 years, and we've probably had a few of those already that we moved away. So we had to be brave, we had to be a bit different. But like I say, it's how I like to do things. I know Stuart definitely likes to work that way, because there's not a better feeling when you do see an Emmy or a Teemu or a Kenny do what they've done for the price you paid. And
you mentioned earlier on about Norwich's scouting network perhaps being quite broad. How broad is that network? And I think you said there's a player everywhere. So how broad is that network in terms of how far Norwich can scout?
Yeah, we scout very far, and we cover a lot of markets, but we're not a big department. There's 7 of us really, and that 7 work exceptionally hard because we have to, because we're fighting against clubs that have got 20, 30, 40 plus scouts. So we don't have a big network, but we just have a group of staff that are honest, work really hard, and we get around and cover a lot of games of football. But we do spread our net as far as we can get to, really.
And for you must have a fair few air miles now, I would imagine.
Just a few. Yeah. I can show you my wallet on my iPhone. It just keeps scrolling.
Any particularly obscure locations that you've been to that stand out?
Leonessa always felt a bit of an obscure one, to be honest. You'd fly into Madrid and then you had 3 hours on a train going through the mountains up into the sort of north of Spain, so that one was always a little bit out there. Some places in Portugal, I watched Benfica B recently, and they were playing a team, Covella I think they're called, and the view was on a mountain, so so I've been a lot of clubs, a lot of strange places, but it's good, that's what you go there for.
Kieran, thank you very much.
Brilliant, nice.
Pleasure.